Hello, and welcome to today's session. Together, we'll explore how to reduce variation and increase accuracy in clinical data abstraction through a structured Iterator Reliability or IRR program. Our goal is to ensure that the specifications are applied consistently in all chart abstractions so that the resulting data is credible. We'll share proven methods and best practices drawn from our extensive experience as a data abstraction outsourcing company. And by the end, you'll know how to build an IRR program that not only produces trustworthy data, but also protects against audit risk and wasted improvement work. I do not have any relationships or conflicts to disclose. Before we dive in, I do want to offer a brief introduction. I'm Stephanie Iorio, the Vice President of Operations, Products, and Services at American Data Network. I've been with the company for over 20 years, and I helped launch our abstraction outsourcing service 15 years ago. Since then, our team has implemented and scaled hundreds of data abstraction programs across the U.S., supporting core measures, national registries, and some state-specific initiatives too. And that scale really matters because it's exposed us to a wide spectrum of documentation patterns, EHR configurations, and other factors that introduce variability when they're not well governed. Today, we'll focus on actionable mechanics that you can apply immediately, whether you're standing up your new IRR program or enhancing an existing one. We'll make it a repeatable process with sustainable oversight. Okay, we defined three core learning objectives for the session. First, we'll examine how Iterator reliability acts as a guardrail for abstraction, ensuring the data produced is consistent, defensible, and trusted. Then we'll explore practical ways to build that reliability into your program. And finally, connect the dots with lessons from the field and ready to use templates so that we can raise accuracy and foster a culture of continuous learning. Here's our roadmap. We'll start with IRR fundamentals, giving the rationale, definitions, and measures of success. Then we can move into building the program to talk about policy, sampling, buddy reviews, and timing. Next, we'll cover some advanced strategies like trigger events and how to use analytics to drive improvements. And we can finish up with tips for future-proofing your reliability. Each section builds on the last so that you leave with a practical playbook. Okay, let's jump into section 1. So why does accuracy in data abstraction matter? Well, as quality leaders, you know better than most that data is the engine driving decisions. The information collected from our patient records is shaping care processes, resource allocation, and organizational priorities. When that data is flawed, the ripple effect can be costly, resulting in wasted improvement efforts, misdirected decisions, and erosion of trust and confidence. And because abstracted data informs external reporting, reimbursement, and those public quality scores too, the stakes are even higher. So simply put, unreliable data, it's not something we can really afford. Variation is where the real challenge begins because it can distort our performance picture, either lulling us into a false sense of security or pushing us to chase false alarms. And then comes CMS validation. As many of you know, CMS reabstracts a small sample of our charts to confirm that the results submitted to their warehouse each quarter are accurate. Well, if our abstractions aren't, we risk failing validation, which comes with significant consequences, including penalties, reputational damage, and even the loss of annual payment update with Medicare. Now, reliable data is the foundation of quality and safety. Without it, everything we build on top is vulnerable. IRR helps protect against that by creating consistent, dependable data that leaders and clinicians and our improvement teams can trust and use to make informed decisions. Well, accuracy may sound simple, but abstraction rarely is. We've got national agencies like the Joint Commission, CMS, the American College of Cardiology, and many more defining the specifications we use. And these evolve as the science advances. But some areas of the specs leave room for subjectivity, and that's where clinical judgment enters, and variation can often follow. Even skilled abstractors who are reviewing the same record can diverge on details, like which timestamp to use or how to weigh conflicting documentation. A powerful example of this is sepsis time zero, or maybe better known as severe sepsis presentation time. That single timestamp starts the clock on the SEP1 bundle, which determines pass or fail for the whole case. We've seen this play out in real life, but I want to talk about a multi-hospital study that was published where 3 abstractors reviewed 80 cases and they agreed on just 29 for that timestamp. That's only a 36% agreement. And because time zero defines the bundle window, the perceived pass rate for those same patients swung between 11 up to 23%, depending on who abstracted them. So same records, same documentation, different results. Now, this is significant because, again, variability is masking true performance. It undermines the confidence in the data, and for sepsis could negatively affect public reporting and validation results. The good news is that we can mitigate and manage this type of variability. We're going to dive deeper into that, but I want you to keep that 36% top of mind because it's the problem statement that we're here to solve. Now, before we go further, I want to just address automation and AI. Many organizations, including ours, are experimenting with AI-driven abstraction in order to extract data from EHRs even faster. It's very exciting and promising, but the reality is that many of these models are still struggling to interpret clinical nuances, ambiguities, and conflicting documentation. So even in an AI-augmented future, human pairing and independent review remain essential. In fact, in a hybrid model, which is what we recommend, this IRR framework remains even more relevant because it's providing the structure for validating AI output and its ongoing accuracy. So building an IRR program now isn't just for today, it's the foundation for what abstraction becomes next. So I want to talk about how we move from variability to reliability. And in part, that answer can be through a robust inter-rater reliability program. At its core, IRR is a second independent review of a sample of cases. It's a built-in double check that raises the confidence in every data point. IRR also lets us measure alignment instead of having to guess. Metrics like DEAR and CAAR put hard numbers to how often our abstractors are in sync. And that quantification is very powerful because it shifts us from assumption statements like, I think we're pretty accurate, to evidence like we agreed on 97% of data points across reviewers. Now, when mismatches occur, and they will, we want to view those as insights because each one is highlighting where guidance needs to be sharpened and training needs to be reinforced. Over time, IRR creates a continuous improvement loop. Abstractors complete their work, the second review highlights mismatches, reconciliation brings us to a single standard, and then those lessons are fed back into our decision aids and training plans. This cycle, when repeated, can steadily reduce variation and reinforce consistency. And that's what high reliability really looks like, turning a vulnerable process into one that produces credible, dependable results. So what do we gain from a strong IRR program? Well, at the highest level, it's credibility. Leaders, clinicians, and those frontline teams, they know the numbers reflect reality and the care we're delivering so that they can act upon it with confidence. IRR also strengthens compliance readiness and peace of mind. When agreement is high internally, external audits like CMS validation are less intimidating because we've already pressure tested the data. Now, beyond that compliance, IRR is building a learning culture because every discrepancy sparks discussion, spreads knowledge, and prevents future errors. With time and reinforcement, staff can see that accuracy isn't just something we monitor, it's supported and celebrated. And this is what builds morale. and gives ownership over the data, signaling to the whole organization that quality data is a shared priority. Okay, let's look at one of the key IRR metrics, DEAR, or Data Element Agreement Rate. Simply put, DEAR is the percentage of data elements where two reviewers agree. It's the most granular check we have because it considers every field, from demographics to clinical details. DEAR functions as a direct item-level agreement rate, which makes it especially useful for root cause and immediate corrective action. And because it drills down to that element level, it can pair well with broader outcome level metrics like CAAR. We'll cover that one next. So DEAR is pinpointing exactly where our inconsistencies occur. If we see mismatches clustering around a specific element, let's take severe sepsis present again, that's a clear signal that the team needs extra support and training in that particular area. So we recommend aiming for 95% or higher. Anything below suggests there may be systemic issues at play. Another important thing about DEAR is that it applies across all abstraction and populations, whether we're dealing with a 200-field registry or a 20-field core measure. It can be tracked at the individual abstractor level to gauge performance, or aggregated and trended over time to reveal patterns across your team. Okay, that next metric is CAAR, or Category Assignment Agreement Rate. So while DEAR zooms in on the individual data points, CAAR takes a step back to assess the case as a whole. CMS uses CAAR to evaluate data reliability for its measures. Some core populations, like the SEP1 bundle, it's a single measure, so it has a case level pass or fail assigned. Other populations, like stroke, have multiples, stroke 1 through 10, for example, and each measure receives its own categorical result. The value of CAAR is that it shows the impact of disagreements. So you might have a decent DEAR, but if mismatches are occurring on those critical elements, the ones that flip the category assignment from pass to fail, CAAR is where we will reveal it. That's why it's the metric that CMS uses for validation. Now, our recommended threshold for CAAR is 85% or higher, even though CMS allows 75%. Setting a higher bar provides a stronger safety margin, and we think better reflects best practice. Anything below that 85% is signaling that the data element mismatches are impacting your outcome categories, and that needs your attention. Before we move on to building the program, let's acknowledge some common challenges in achieving high IRR. The first is complex cases. I don't have to tell you that patients don't always fit neatly into our national definitions, and medical record documentation can be incomplete or even contradictory. Another challenge is specification changes. Measure and registry requirements evolve annually, and sometimes even more frequently. Each update can introduce knowledge gaps and temporary dips in reliability. Training is also a factor. Abstractors come to us from diverse professional backgrounds with varying levels of experience and exposure to data collection. And they likely learned how to abstract in different ways too. Without standardization, interpretations will vary, and turnover in those positions only compounds our issues because those new hires are just continually working up the learning curve. EHR and documentation changes also add to complexity. New templates and workflows can disrupt abstractors who are accustomed to their established paths, leading to missed data. Workload pressures are another challenge our teams face. We have high volumes, tight deadlines, unexpected or unplanned absences that our abstractors are covering, and it's pushing them to move faster than is optimal. Fatigue and information overload make errors more likely and consistency harder to maintain. Now, I raise these challenges not to discourage, but to emphasize that high IRR requires conscious effort and systems thinking. The good news is the IRR program we'll be discussing today is designed to address many of these head on. All right, we've covered some of the IRR fundamentals, so now we can move into Section 2. A few core pieces need to be in place when we're building an IRR program. First is a formal policy and set of standard operating procedures. This should define the purpose of IRR, clarify key terms like what constitutes a mismatch. It should also outline roles and responsibilities, who and how we select the sample, who performs re-abstractions and adjudicates disagreements, and how our results are shared to promote learning. We also need to include timelines, acceptable thresholds, and IRR frequency. Another component is the buddy system, where we pair abstractors for independent review so that no one's work goes unchecked. Cross-train your staff so that more than one person can abstract the measures and registries. Creating these intentional built-in redundancies not only strengthens IRR, but it adds resilience to your overall abstraction program by protecting continuous operations. Next is a sampling plan. We have to decide what percentage of cases we review each cycle and ensure that sample is fair and representative. We'll cover this more in an upcoming slide. Next is establishing a regular schedule. Monthly is common, though some measures with lower volumes may be better suited to quarterly IRR. Whatever interval you choose, we recommend setting clear timelines at each stage and then tie the schedule to your deadlines so IRR informs case corrections before the data is used internally and especially before it's transmitted externally. Finally, a feedback loop. IRR results shouldn't just be tallied and filed away. We have to use them to drive improvement. That includes individual feedback where a reviewer misses something and providing team updates when patterns emerge. The feedback loop is what turns IRR findings into learning and process change. Here's the IRR process at a glance. First, we have initial abstraction. This is where the original abstractor completes the case as usual, capturing all required data in the abstraction tool. Step 2 is independent re-abstraction. A buddy blindly reviews the same case or sample of cases without ever seeing the first person's work. Ideally, this happens soon after the original abstraction so the data is fresh and any corrections can be applied quickly. The third step is where we compare results. We get the two sets of data and place them side by side to flag mismatches at both the data element and the category assignment levels. Here, a structured template is helpful, like the spreadsheet included in ADN's free toolkit. It provides an example of how to organize and calculate your IRR findings for sepsis. Step 4 is resolve discrepancies and embed learning. Abstractors discuss the differences, reach consensus, and correct the data if needed. When agreement between the reviewers can't be reached, it gets escalated to a supervisor or another SME. It could also be posted back to the measure authority for final guidance. Remember, each resolution isn't just a fix. We want these hardwired and shared so that the clarified standard is applied to future abstractions. Step 5, analyze and act. Once sampled cases are reconciled, we calculate the final DIR and CAAR, and then we look for patterns, recurring elements, documentation pitfalls, or an individual that might need more support. We use these insights to clarify guidance and adjust the training. Now, if major concerns or gaps surface, we want you to consider expanding the IRR sample, maybe even re-abstracting 100% of cases to ensure your accuracy. Let's look closer at the buddy system. This second set of eyes is what makes the process objective and trustworthy. To make these pairings feasible, teams often invest in cross-training to match expertise. Building a second qualified reviewer for key measures and registries is worthwhile because it adds flexibility and resilience. It protects against single points of failure, giving your team more options when coverage is needed. And beyond catching discrepancies, the buddy system naturally builds collaboration and shared learning. Working through mismatches helps grow that collective expertise, and it raises confidence for the whole team. Finally, your leadership support matters here. Protecting time to support IRR is paramount. You may need to recalibrate productivity expectation and workloads so that these quality checks don't feel like extra unsupported work. Leaders can also use IRR results to monitor staff competency and guide targeted development over time, reinforcing professional growth. Now I'll walk you through sampling, which is how we determine which cases go through our IRR process. A common starting point is 5% of cases each cycle. This keeps the sample meaningful but manageable. Consider setting a floor. For example, review at least 3 cases per population or 5%, whichever is greater. That makes sure low volume programs still get adequate review. Select your cases systematically and without bias. One simple approach, pick every nth case, say every 3rd case, or you can use a randomizer so that your results reflect everyday work. Now, that said, there are times when it's valuable to take a targeted sample, whether that's because you have resource-related reasons, or you want to uncover patterns or address a known problem area. For instance, you might focus on cases that failed the measure, or you'll select a specific case type within a population. Let's take stroke, for example, which has hemorrhagic stroke versus, say, ischemic stroke with procedure. That will open up a different cross-section of data elements for review. Another example might be designing focused samples around those high-impact fields, the ones that affect outcomes or risk adjustment. In STS-ACS, we've got beta blocker with 24 hours, discharge medications, post-op complications. Another focused sample would target elements that drive big skip logic cascades. If we talk about sepsis again, transfer for another hospital, comfort measures only, severe sepsis present or septic shock present, all enable or disable a number of data elements that can affect your scores. It's also smart to ensure that the sample is representative across abstractors and measure sets. Each person's work should be included periodically, and if your team is covering multiple hospitals or an abstractor covers multiple registries, you want to sample from each one rather than pooling together. The bottom line, choose a percentage that fits your volumes, enforce a small minimum, and pick cases fairly. That way, your IRR results reflect true performance and give you insight you can act on. Regarding IRR frequency and cycle times, most teams run it monthly, but quarterly can work too. Just remember that more frequent reviews catch issues sooner and help your abstractors build good habits. We recommend trying to wrap IRR cycles within at least 14 business days. Start by selecting the sample, we'll call it day 0, and you want that to be at least 2 weeks before the data is needed for your internal committees or leadership presentations, and especially 2 weeks before any external submissions. Assigned buddies should aim to complete their re-abstractions within 7 to 10 business days of that sample selection. Then we can give our original abstractors 2 to 3 days to review mismatches, clarify their responses, and correct data. Any remaining time should be used to discuss unresolved discrepancies and to finalize your DEER and CAAR calculations. Now, you're not alone if you've been thinking, my team is already stretched. How can we possibly add buddy reviews and a 5% sample every month? And that's a valid concern. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how to make IRR practical and sustainable and why the effort pays off. As I've been presenting, I'm describing the ideal IRR program, but it's okay to start small and focused. Set your sampling strategy so that it provides meaningful insight without overloading the team. Fit IRR into your existing workflow. Schedule it alongside normal deadlines so that it feels routine and not like that extra project. And use the resources you already have. The buddy system is intended to pair and cross-train staff you already depend on. The return on investment is real. A modest, predictable IRR process prevents bigger downstream costs by avoiding failed audits, last-minute data scrambles, inaccurate public reporting, and of course, wasted time and effort on flawed data. Remember, verified data makes it easier for you to earn trust, influence change, and secure leadership support for the initiatives. Redundancy isn't always bad, and it certainly isn't one size fits all. You have the ability to direct efforts where it matters most and strike the right balance between cost and benefit for your organization. We say scale IRR to the criticality of the data you're collecting. For lower risk elements or measures, intermittent checks may be enough, providing that light touch protection without overwhelming your staff. If needed, you can reserve in-depth reviews for high-impact populations tied to performance deficits, external reporting, reimbursement, and safety issues. When it comes to those areas, going deeper is worth the investment. So after you make IRR practical and right-sized, the next step is getting your team on board. How you frame it makes a big difference. Position IRR as support, not surveillance. It's a safety net to catch issues early and keep everyone aligned, not a way to police performance. Normalize coaching by trending mismatches as opportunities that refine judgment and clarify specs. Show those quick wins by sharing real examples where IRR prevented data errors, clarified something confusing, or improved an outcome before it was reported. Proof builds buy-in. Consider publishing your cadence, thresholds, and even high-level results. Nothing kills anxiety like transparency. And most importantly, close the loop. When a discrepancy is resolved, communicate the standard and update those decision aids and training materials so everyone benefits. That's how IRR strengthens not just the data, but the culture behind it, one that builds confidence and pride in the data that your team is delivering. IRR should feel safe and supported, but we must balance that with accountability. Accuracy is a core job expectation. We want a non-punitive approach while also firmly conveying that producing reliable data is part of the professional standard for the role. So set clear, objective targets up front. For example, 95% DEER and 85% CAAR are your baselines so that abstractors know what acceptable looks like. Next, integrate these standards into the abstractor role itself so that accuracy is sitting right alongside productivity, timeliness, and other performance goals. And if results fall short, we want to start with support and not discipline. Introduce focused coaching, tailored training plans, or if needed, additional IRR sampling to verify improvement. The goal is to help each abstractor build skill sets so the whole team can trust the data. We also want to recognize and celebrate the success of individuals or teams who maintain high accuracy. This might be a simple shout out at a quality meeting or on a scorecard. To recap, set the bar clearly, provide them the ladder to reach it, and then be prepared by policy to escalate if job expectations aren't met despite support. Having clear standards, supportive development, and consistent follow-through keep the program credible and effective. Fostering that accountability while preserving the culture of learning you've worked so hard to create. Even with the right culture and targets, mismatches are inevitable. The key is having a defined process so our disagreements become documented decisions. Start with the buddy level. After they review the chart and a mismatch is found, we want them to cite the specification and the exact source in the record so that it can try to be aligned and resolved quickly. If agreement can't be reached, we want to escalate promptly to the supervisor, lead abstractor if you have those, or a small adjudication group. Don't let debates linger. Next, be sure to document the decision and correct the official record as needed. Now we embed the update in all the materials, again for that stickiness factor. Our guiding principle, decide once, apply everywhere. Each resolved mismatch becomes a reusable standard that reduces repeat errors and strengthens reliability across the team. Let's move into Section 3 and tackle some advanced strategies. We've talked about incorporating routine IRR as part of your business as usual. Now, I want to highlight some trigger events that call for extra or focused reviews outside those normal cycles, as these can introduce temporary periods of vulnerability. Let's start with an obvious one, specification updates. Anytime the measure registry definitions change, typically annually, Consider increasing your IRR sample sizes. Even seasoned abstractors benefit from confirming they're interpreting the new versions the right way. Staff changes also warrant closer reviews, including new hires or abstraction role shifts, like when someone is newly cross-trained. One effective strategy in this scenario is to assign the new abstractor an initial set of 5 cases, and then have a second reviewer perform IRR on all 5. If agreement meets or exceeds your established thresholds, great news. You can clear the abstractor to assume the full assignment and move them into routine IRR cycles with confidence. New measures or populations also deserve more oversight. When your hospital launches a new registry or program, you'll want to plan for heavier IRR until reliability stabilizes. There's also documentation and EHR changes to consider, especially when new providers are added or a service line is introduced. Modifying templates and workflows can shift where data lives and how it's recorded. A focused IRR cycle can help with early detection and any corrections. There's also performance red flags to consider. Drops in agreement rates in a particular population, data field, or abstractor should trigger expanded IRR sampling so that you can scope the reach of any errors and inform your action plans. In summary, when people, processes, or documentation change, or the data itself signals a concern, pause and check. Including triggers like these in your IRR policy helps ensure you have a comprehensive program. Another important event to plan for is CMS validation. If and when your hospital is selected, it's worth stepping up your IRR for peace of mind. Let's look at 2 critical windows that, when managed well, can help reduce risk and protect your scores. The first window is before CMS selects cases. As soon as you're notified that your hospital will be validated, you're going to want to coordinate with the medical records or HIM department to ensure you have open communication and collaboration. Next, consider expanding or even doubling your routine IRR sample on only the measures being validated. These additional reviews strengthen accuracy and build confidence heading into the audit. The second window is after CMS makes its official chart request. It's critical that you have a process for reviewing the selected records before those paper or PDF versions get submitted to CDAC. The official chart request from CMS will be sent to the medical records director, the one they have on record, and the due date for those charts is included in the request. For inpatient records, it's typically 30 calendar days. Immediately after that request is received in the medical records department, you want that HIM director to notify the quality team. That way you can re-abstract the exact cases CMS selected. That way you know how you're likely to score and what mismatches they may find. As importantly, you want to review the paper or PDF chart packets that HIM plans to submit. Your team is going to be the best at ensuring all the documentation used during abstraction, notes, labs, orders, sources for your timestamps are included. Missing documentation is a common cause of validation discrepancies, and CDAC only accepts the first record submission. No supplemental pages can be added later. Why this matters? By proactively expanding IRR before validation and then re-abstracting the CMS selected cases once the requests arrive, you can predict likely scores, anticipate mismatches, and prepare a response just in case you fall below thresholds. This proactive review helps safeguard your public reporting, your payment updates, and overall performance record. Let's discuss how to turn our IRR data into insights. While spreadsheets provide a snapshot of agreement rates per case, the real power comes from aggregating and analyzing results over time. Start by trending your DIR and CAAR over the cycles, whether that's monthly or quarterly. Then slice it by population, abstractor, and data element. Use trend lines to determine if agreement is improving, stabilizing, or slipping. Changes in rates can reveal creeping process or interpretation issues before they grow. Use heat maps or other visualizations so that you can see where the most commonly mismatched elements are, turning your IRR into a diagnostic tool. Then translate those insights into an action queue. Make a short list of the top recurring mismatches and assign an owner and a due date. This keeps follow-up visible and prevents issues from stalling. From there, drill deeper into why the mismatches happened. Create simple reason categories like missed by Abstractor, knowledge gap, conflicting documentation, or criteria ambiguity. Over time, these reasons build root cause intelligence. Finally, act on what you learn. Tailor your trainings to your weak spots, clarify the guidance and decision aids, advocate for documentation fixes to make our jobs easier, and escalate performance concerns when needed. Once your IRR process is stable and you've built those baseline analytics, you can move into deeper insights and ROI tracking. Start by calculating error rates at the data element level and then segmenting those by abstractor. That'll further clarify whether an issue is widespread or tied to an individual. These insights can make your education and support far more precise and impactful. Another suggestion is to review your reason buckets and refine those categories to better align with your reality. Get more specific. For example, dissect those that have been classified as your initial bucket of missed by Abstractor and break them down into incorrect data source, overlooked documentation, navigation errors. More precision means better coaching. You can also work to connect IRR patterns to your real-world outcomes. One example, if your IRR reviews flagged high mismatch rates on key data elements and your team caught and corrected the cases before a submission, you could show that IRR prevented a failed CMS validation. This is the kind of evidence that proves IRR's value. Finally, track mismatches alongside your interventions to determine what is actually working. Link your top recurring mismatches to the corrective actions you implemented. Maybe it was a self-study of the data element specs, a one-on-one review of the EHR with a SME, or the creation of a new decision aid. The bottom line, keep your analytics focused, your actions specific, and the improvements visible, underscoring that the IRR program isn't just catching errors, but it's driving measurable, sustained reliability. Leadership's steady presence is one of the biggest predictors of long-term IRR success. Ongoing engagement tells the team that reliability is not optional, it's expected and valued. Now, that doesn't have to mean long meetings or deep technical dives. What matters is a brief, consistent rhythm. Recalibrate the workloads. We have to protect time and resources for IRR and the associated analytics. Make space for reviews in productivity expectations, job descriptions, and competency assessments so that this work becomes part of the norm. Keep IRR visible. In your routine operational reviews, be sure you're looking at DEER and CAAR. Are they within the established thresholds at every level? If not, ask why and find out what's being done. Track the fixes. Follow the action queue that we asked them to create. You're going to review those top recurring mismatches, confirm each has an owner and a due date, and then check on what's pending, resolved, or needs escalation. Ensure that the issues are moving from discussion into action. Close those loops. Confirm that each IRR cycle is formally completed before the data gets used internally or submitted externally. We want corrections to be applied, decisions documented, and your educational materials updated. Last but not least is model the priority. When leaders talk about IRR, ask questions, and celebrate improvements, It signals that reliability matters at the highest level, and that helps keep your top talent engaged and pride in their work. These small but visible touches from leadership create accountability. They keep IRR from fading into the background noise and elevate it from a side task to an organizational priority. All right, we're ready for our final section, future-proofing reliability. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, AI is beginning to influence clinical data abstraction in meaningful ways. It holds great potential for faster data retrieval, reduced administrative workload, and greater precision. If thoughtfully integrated, AI can handle those repetitive data captures while allowing our human experts to focus on higher level decisions, like applying clinical reasoning and ensuring the record truly reflects the patient's story. But progress requires prudence. Current models are still struggling with the subtle context behind clinical documentation, such as abbreviations, subjective language, double negatives, and other inconsistencies. These are places where fully automated calls can go wrong, making human judgment indispensable. At ADN, we're piloting what we believe is the right path forward, a hybrid approach. AI accelerates the work, but humans are validating and interpreting nuances and resolving ambiguities. This is efficiency without compromising accuracy. And IRR is playing a pivotal role in this AI evolution. The second reviews and reconciliation process you're building now aren't just for today's human abstractions, they're the foundation that will let you safely adopt AI tomorrow. This same IRR framework will apply to AI-generated output so that trust can be established before the data gets used or reported. That's the future we see: AI-accelerated work, human-verified confidence. The insights we glean from IRR shouldn't live in a silo. When the team spots repeated documentation issues or data element confusion, that intelligence also belongs with the people who can fix it. The clinicians, informatics, billing, even leadership. Sharing these insights helps refine workflows and reinforces the delivery of evidence-based care. IRR often exposes upstream issues, ambiguous phrasing, missing timestamps, or other critical data that's buried in the wrong place. Instead of asking abstractors to search harder or work around these gaps, let's bring them forward to the people who can address the root causes. We can ask clinicians to adjust how they document critical elements, or informaticists to tweak templates and add prompts so the important data is captured cleanly. Or get with decision makers who can update protocols to align with current standards. When you loop these discoveries back into the system, IRR stops being just a quality department or QA activity and becomes a driver of system improvement, strengthening documentation and setting the stage for cleaner, more trustworthy data across the board. And remember, no one knows these charts, the abstraction specifications, your provider's documentation habits, or your organization's internal workflows better than your team of abstractors. They have a unique perspective, and it allows them to see the details that others miss. By sharing IRR insights upstream, you're not just fixing data, you're unlocking expertise that can shape better systems and smarter decisions. That same expertise is exactly what positions your abstractors to evolve from data collectors to data advisors, and it readies your organization for the next stage of data maturity. As AI and automation change the work of abstraction, the real opportunity isn't just speeding up what we already do. It's moving from collecting data to driving meaningful, measurable improvements in patient care. We have to move beyond a meet the mandate mindset, and the first step in that evolution is reliable, credible data, which is exactly what IRR is built to deliver. Let me situate IRR inside a broader progression we're all navigating, and that's the journey of data maturity. In short, Organizations are striving to move up the pyramid from simply having data to routinely using it to drive action at scale. IRR can help you break the gravitational pull of these early stages by converting raw outputs into validated, trusted data, creating the stable base we need for analytics, insights, and decisions. This journey can also reshape the role of abstractors. As data collection becomes lighter with automation, the ones who know these charts and specifications and workflows best can evolve from gatherers to analysts and advisors. They'll start by ensuring your data is trustworthy and then channel that expertise to surface patterns, spot risk, and uncover opportunities for improvement. Now, many of your abstractors are already supporting PI work. Imagine what's possible if we intentionally grow their skills and make it their priority. That's the power of IRR. It creates the foundation so your organization can climb the maturity pyramid and reach the point where using data to drive and sustain change is routine, not a special project or initiative, but it's the everyday work. This is how programs progress from collection heavy to action heavy, and ultimately translate data into lasting performance gains and better patient outcomes. We've covered a lot of ground, and before I do a recap, I want to reassure you that ADN is practicing what it preaches. We operate at a large scale with hundreds of clients, tens of thousands of cases, and a diverse team of expert abstractors. Building a disciplined IRR process has proven invaluable for us countless times, catching issues before they reach clients or external warehouses, helping us identify and retain top talent, cross-training in a controlled and methodical way, and earn a strong reputation for accuracy. This isn't theory, it works. So with that, I'm going to close with a few key points that you can take with you. First, accuracy matters. When abstraction isn't reliable, it can mask true performance, misdirect our improvement efforts, and increase risk for failed audits and payment penalties. Finding and addressing variation early is how you protect your organization. Second, a structured IRR program is both a safety net and a learning loop. Systematic double checks and clear agreement metrics like the DEAR and CAAR and disciplined mismatch resolution safeguard your data integrity and strengthen your team's collective expertise. Third, build smart and make it practical. Clear policies, representative sampling, and the buddy system help keep the work manageable while still meaningful. Don't forget you can scale IRR efforts to the data criticality so that you're investing where accuracy matters most at your organization. Culture and accountability have to coexist. A non-punitive environment encourages engagement and learning, while clear expectations and supportive development help keep the standards high. Stay agile. Use triggers like specification changes, staff transitions, CMS validation, and data concerns to dial IRR up when risk is higher. And use those analytics. Leverage the trend lines, the error rates at the element and abstractor levels, and those root cause categories. That's how you focus your corrective actions. And finally, see IRR as future-proofing. The foundation you're building now will carry forward as AI enters the abstraction space, giving you the confidence to adopt new tools safely. Reliable data isn't luck, it's built, case by case, cycle by cycle. Okay, I think that's a wrap on IRR, at least for today. We hope you're leaving with not just ideas, but a concrete sense of what's possible when you bring discipline, structure, and leadership attention to abstraction. As I said, IRR has been central to our own success. Sustained reliability doesn't come from talent alone. It comes from applying the same governance model we've walked through today. To get you started, ADN's created an Iterator Reliability Toolkit, and it's available at no cost. It includes an IRR checklist, which is a quick start guide drawn from our 15 years of experience, and it'll help launch you faster so that you don't miss any critical steps. Also included is an IRR calculator template. It's a spreadsheet-based tool that auto-calculates DEAR and CAAR. It highlights mismatches and creates an audit trail that you can keep cycle after cycle. Last but not least, there's an IRR policy template. It's a ready-made framework for your own program, covering definitions, sampling, thresholds, and more, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Together, these resources give you a head start on embedding IRR as both a safety net and a governance engine. My final encouragement is this: take these methods home, adapt them to your organization, and start building reliability into every case, every abstractor, every time. With that, you'll not only safeguard today's data, but also be more prepared for an AI-augmented future, ensuring that human-verified confidence always underpins your data. Thank you again for your time. If you'd like some support as you put these into action, please don't hesitate to email me. I'd love to connect.